Tracking down his father hadn't been particularly difficult. He'd gone through the local phone directories and found that there was only one V.B. Caxton listed in the local area. He'd borrowed his mum's car on the pretext of going for a job interview, and instead had driven over to Otley Way, a nondescript terrace of Edwardian red brick houses that had seen better days. Most no longer sported the original sash windows and leaded glass front doors. In their place were those ubiquitous double-glazed frames of the greying white plastic variety and grubby net curtains. He'd found a space on the opposite side of the road and slipped on a pair of sunglasses. He felt like a complete prick, but it had to be done. It seemed like an eternity before the front door was to open, but open it did, and that fat bastard eventually stepped out into daylight. He hadn't changed, of course. Still had that ruddy red complexion, greased black thinning hair, and pointed chin. George had seen enough, and turned the key in the ignition. It was a whole week before he'd drum up enough courage to go back with the loaded gun. It was early evening. This time there were no parking spaces nearby, so he'd parked further down the road and walked back to the house. A young woman answered the door, and he'd asked if Vic was at home. He was apparently having a bath. "Oh, that's okay," he had said. "I'll wait." The girl had shown him into the communal lounge, smiled nervously, and then had disappeared. He wasted little time, bounded up the stairs, and could now hear the sound of running water. The adrenaline was pumping through his body. He was incredibly angry. He just wanted to get the job done. The bathroom door was half glazed with frosted glass. He tried opening it, but knew instinctively that it would be locked. His father always locked the bathroom door. So instead he threw all his weight, shoulder first, into the aging woodwork, and the door surrendered feebly, with the sound of splintering. "What the fuck?" The pink figure of his father was discernible through the steam. "Hi, Dad. Just thought it was time to pay you a visit." And with those words he'd pulled out the gun, pointed it directly at his father, and pulled the trigger. There was nothing more than a sickening click, and in an instant that large pink frame had sprung from the water like an enormous whale. Before George knew it, he could feel his father's filthy hands around his neck and the cold tiles of the wall pressing hard against his back. His strength began to sap. But before it did, he summoned up all the energy he could muster and focused on the trigger. The crack of the gun was impressive in a confined space, and its immediate effect was that the hands around his neck loosened like a taut tourniquet being cut. He could breathe again. And then he had fired the gun twice more for good measure, and could feel the dead man's warm blood pouring forth as profusely as the hot water tap, which was now still flowing.